When Adam and Eve left the Garden of Eden, they stepped into a harsh, untamed world. A world without the constant presence of God walking beside them, a world where their choices carried heavy consequences. But even in their brokenness, they carried with them God's promise, a hope for redemption. This is the story of what happened next. Banished from the paradise of Eden, Adam and Eve found themselves in a world that was wild and untamed. The air was harsher, the soil harder to till, and survival required sweat and struggle. Adam worked the ground with calloused hands, breaking the earth to grow food, but the land resisted him. Eve, once surrounded by endless fruit, now worked alongside him, carrying water and gathering wild plants. She bore the pain of their new life, but with every pang of labor, she remembered God's promise, that one day, her offspring would bring redemption. One day, after much toil and tears, Eve gave birth to their first son. She held him close, tears streaming down her face. "I have brought forth a man with the help of the Lord," she whispered. They named him Cain, meaning acquired or possessed. Soon after, another child was born, a boy they named Abel, meaning breath or vapor. As they grew, Cain and Abel became the first brothers, but their differences ran deeper than anyone could have imagined. Cain, the firstborn, was strong and ambitious. He worked the soil like his father, cultivating crops and tending to the land. His hands were always stained with earth, and his pride lay in the fruits of his labor. Abel, on the other hand, had a gentler spirit. He became a shepherd, caring for the flocks. He loved the quiet of the fields, the bleating of the sheep, and the open skies. His heart often turned to God in gratitude for the life he had. The brothers lived side by side, but even in those early days, a shadow began to grow between them. One day, Cain and Abel brought offerings to the Lord. Cain presented some of the fruits of his labor, grains, vegetables, and the produce of the land. Abel, however, brought the very best of his flock, fat portions from the firstborn lambs, a sacrifice of love and devotion. God looked upon Abel's offering with favor. The smoke from Abel's altar rose high into the heavens, a sweet aroma to the Lord. But Cain's offering was different. God saw Cain's heart, a heart filled with pride and lacking true devotion. The smoke from Cain's offering curled low to the ground, rejected. Cain's face darkened with anger, his heart filled with jealousy. Seeing this, God spoke to him, his voice gentle but firm. "Why are you angry, Cain? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." But Cain didn't listen. His jealousy festered, growing like a dark storm cloud in his soul. One day, Cain approached Abel in the fields. His tone was calm, almost inviting. "Let's go out to the field," he said, his voice hiding the storm within. Abel, unaware of his brother's intentions, followed him to the open plains. As they walked, Cain's anger boiled over. He struck Abel with a rock, his hands trembling with fury. Abel fell to the ground, his life slipping away like a whisper in the wind. For the first time in human history, death entered the world, not by accident, but by the hand of a brother. The earth itself seemed to cry out in anguish as Abel's blood soaked into the ground. God's voice thundered, "Cain, where is your brother Abel?" Cain, now trembling with guilt but hardened by pride, replied, "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" God's voice grew heavy with sorrow and judgment. "What have you done? Listen. Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you are under a curse and driven from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the soil, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth." Cain's face crumpled. "My punishment is too great to bear. Today you are driving me from the land, and I will be hidden from your presence. I will be a restless wanderer, and whoever finds me will kill me." But even in his judgment, God showed mercy. He placed a mark on Cain, a sign of protection, and declared, "Whoever kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over." Cain left his family and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. There, he began a new life, but the weight of his sin never left him. Meanwhile, Adam and Eve mourned the loss of both their sons, Abel, whose life was taken, and Cain, who was exiled. But even in their grief, they clung to God's promise, believing that one day, redemption would come. And so, the story of humanity continued, scarred by sin, but never abandoned by the God who loved them. The story of Cain and Abel teaches a profound lesson about the importance of giving to God wholeheartedly and with the right intentions. Abel's offering was accepted because it came from the best of what he had, his firstborn lambs, and was given in faith and love. In contrast, Cain's offering was rejected because it lacked sincerity and devotion, revealing a heart that was not fully aligned with God. This reminds us that God values the posture of our hearts over the material value of our gifts. Furthermore, Cain's jealousy toward Abel led to anger, and ultimately, a tragic act of murder. Jealousy, when left unchecked, can destroy relationships and lead us down a dangerous path. Instead, we must celebrate others' successes and trust God's fairness and love. Let this story remind us to guard our hearts, give generously, and resist the destructive power of envy, for sin is always lurking, but we have the power to overcome it with God's help.